Well, welcome everybody. I'm so pleased today to be chatting with Carmen Tapio. She's the president and CEO of North End Teleservices. Carmen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Andy, it is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I want to just start off a little bit about your history because you are not from Omaha. You're actually from the Virgin Islands is where you were born. So yeah, let's just talk about, how you got into Omaha, how you came here to be.
Andy, I actually wasn't born in the Virgin Islands. My parents are from the Virgin Islands. So my mother is from a British island. She's from Tortola. And my father is from a U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. I, oddly enough, was born in Montana. So,
Okay.
a kind of a Midwestern girl by birth, but by way of the Virgin Islands. And my family was military. And so, we lived a lot of different places and moved here in 1975 from Guam. So we spent some time not only, being a family from the Virgin Islands, but living on islands like Guam, and we were stationed in Puerto Rico as well, but we moved here in 75.
Well, so you really have had, you talk a little bit in your article about the globe, just being global, but you literally have lived around the globe. So,
yeah.
And one of the things I do want to mention is you are our game changer woman for the next edition that we have coming out in about a month or so. But let's talk a little bit, there's so much that's happened between you getting to North End Teleservices. So let's just talk a little bit about that journey, and then I want to dive into North End Teleservices.
Okay. I've had a great opportunity, Andy, to do a lot of things in my career. And quite honestly, sometimes when I look back on my career, I forget that I did certain things because I've been so blessed in the variety of places that I've lived and things that I've had the opportunity to do. And, I would just say early on in my career, being in a service industry, I've worked places like our wonderful Henry Doyle Zoo here in Omaha, and spent some time working at Village Inn, learning about the food service industry, but really more about customer service there. And then, moving into business at a pretty young age and working at some of our large companies like First Data Resources, which really set me on the path of my career as what I would say initially was a generalist in a lot of different things, working in a lot of functional disciplines, and then finding my way to a career in contact center services ultimately.
Yeah. I love this quote that your father taught me when I was in my 20s that it's great to have a plan for your life and it's great to write it down, but it's more important to keep a vision in your mind for what your life can be. And that kind of gets brought up several times during the article. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I was having this conversation with a young millennial person who is embarking upon her career and also thinking about entrepreneurship. And she was really struggling with, kind of her path of life. And my father did teach me when I was in my, very early 20s that it really all begins here, begins in your mind's eye. And writing it on paper is great, but if you don't believe it and if you can't envision it, then it's hard to actually achieve it. And he told me that, in my being a young person and somewhat skeptical, it's like, right, Dad,
Sure. Been there. Yeah.
Been there. And he was right. He was right. I was able to set some goals in my life at a fairly young age, at a very young age. One of them, for example, was to own my first home by the time I was 21 years old. And I found my way there. It was a goal that I envisioned, and it was a goal that I achieved. And so that is a practice that I've used in my life. And it's amazing to me the number of times that I can look back and say, okay, how did I get here? I couldn't have planned this if I had plotted it on paper, but I got there somehow.
Yeah. And I want to just touch a little bit on just some of the challenges, because I know we talk a lot about diversity. This is our diversity issue, and going through the corporate world and all that, being, you said at times, one of the only African-American women maybe a few African American men, as you kind of, and trying to find, you know, establish who you are and your own personality. Can you just chat a little bit about that?
It is sometimes, difficult as a woman, and back in the 80s and early 90s, certainly, oftentimes being the only Black person in the room.
Mhm.
And I say that, but I also tell people even today that while it may have been challenging for me or for us, it's a good thing to be the first, right? It means you're
Yeah.
there and you're charting a path for others going forward. And so I was fortunate to have people in my life, including my parents, that taught me I could do anything that I set my mind to. But I also had some really wonderful mentors and sponsors, what I would say were sponsors, who presented opportunities to me that I could say yes to. I could learn a lot. I could really gain new skills and have new opportunities to do different things. Um, and as I said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable in being
Yeah.
the first or being the only, and making sure that through my career, bringing other people along as well, and bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to the
Yeah.
forefront of conversation. So it can be a challenge, but it can also be a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about North End Teleservices, kind of in a nutshell. So how did that come to be?
I actually had a consulting business prior to North End Teleservices called Core Advantage Consulting, and worked as a strategist in a lot of several different disciplines, helping companies, small businesses, but also very large enterprises look at branding and marketing and service and operations and all of that. And so I was hired as a consultant to help come up with a business plan to bring jobs to Northeast Omaha. And that really was the laying the groundwork for what North End Teleservices is today. So we started as a nonprofit in 2015. We are actually just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, September 1st, and saw that not only could we have a mission of creating jobs and changing lives, which was what it originally our mission was and remains, but the extent to which that mission has expanded to holistic care of our employees is something that I couldn't have imagined back in 2015.
Yeah.
2018, I took over ownership of the company and am the sole owner of North End today.
Right. Well, congratulations on that. I just know, I mean, also just being a woman too, and being, for me in the publishing business, it's, it has its challenges, but having that ownership and being able to lead a company and being the visionary, it's just a wonderful opportunity.
It's a huge opportunity, Andy, that it also is an encouragement, I think, and an example for others, for
Yeah.
other women to lead and to be in business. Being an entrepreneur is a challenge on its own, but certainly being a woman in business, and we know what it takes to give it our all. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears involved. We try to make it look easy, but we know what it really takes, and I think that serves as a great example for other women as well, and other
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
So fostering diversity, inclusion, opportunity in the workplace and in the community, that's something that I know you've said that you're passionate about. Just tell us some of the activities and initiatives that you're involved in.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, I say it's just a part of my DNA. And so it's an extension of who I am as a person. It's an extension of who I am as a business leader. And I've committed myself and also my organization, to be a good example of what it can look like in the workplace. And it's one of our values. Some of the initiatives that I'm involved in include, for Blueprint Nebraska, which was a state initiative to develop a strategy for the state of Nebraska. I was council chair for Blueprint Nebraska. And I'm also council chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we call commitment to opportunity, diversity, and equity for the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And I also am council chair for our Thrive 2020 task force initiative, which is specific to economic recovery during this time and making sure that happens in an inclusive way. in a former life, I was chief diversity officer for Carlson Companies for a number of years, and ultimately responsible for social responsibility for Carlson Companies globally.
So what words of encouragement or inspiration, I mean, would you give women today as they're kind of coming up into their careers and really kind of trying to find their mark and their way?
I think, Andy, the conversation of being your whole self, and as women, there are things that are innate to us as women that men don't necessarily have, right? And so it's sometimes we're taught or told that being who we are as women is not acceptable in the workplace. And I would say that one of the strengths that we have is our ability to lead with our heart. And so that is something that, when we learn, and I have this conversation with with other women my age, we have an instinct that was given to us as a gift. And the more that we learn to listen to and rely upon our instinct along with other information and data, but your instinct is rarely ever wrong. And so I would say those two things, leading with your heart, and then also paying attention to your instinct and trusting your instinct in life and in business and really everything that you do.
Absolutely. Well, last minute or so, kind of future thoughts for your business, future thoughts for you, for the community.
Future thoughts, Andy, is I'm so hopeful, really from a business perspective. We want to continue to grow. We were recently named to Inc.'s 5,000 list of fastest growing private companies in America, and we would like to continue with our growth strategy and doing what we do in communities to bring jobs to people in communities and to change lives. So that's one. And then I'm really hopeful about the future in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm liking what I'm seeing with engagement at all levels in our community and in business. And so I say, we've got to push this boulder up and over the mountain once and for all. And there are a lot of people that are working hard to do that. So I'm really hopeful about seeing change happen in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the Fortune 5,000. That's, to me, just
thank you,
especially with what you've done in a short amount of time with the current company. And I just want to say thank you. It's so great. I mean, we just talked before we got started to hit record that we haven't actually met before. So it's such a pleasure to get to know you through this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Same here. Pleasure is mine. Thank you for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome.
All
And
right.
folks, we'll be right back.
Thank you.